7 o'clock, meeting of the Planning Commission will come to order. May I have a roll call, please?
David Dahl.
Here.
Margaret Moran.
Here.
Greg Sanders.
I'm here.
Greg Sutton.
Here.
Colleen Murphy-White.
Here.
Justin Merriman.
Here. Thank you. All right, I believe we have 2 sets of minutes in front of us.
Yes, sir, and your eyes do not deceive you. That date does say 2018. So the clerk's office discovered some meeting minutes from August 27th of 2018 that came before you in October of 2018. There were some typos and changes suggested, and they were to be brought back to you, and for some reason they just never circled back. So we put them on here for you guys to take a look at. I know some of you may not have even been on the planning
In
commission
some
at that time.
dark closet somewhere.
It was literally in a dark closet somewhere.
Anything else interesting in there?
Mr. Allen, I thought it was a subtle hint.
I was sworn to secrecy of what else was in the closet.
All right, so minutes from August 27th, 2018, April 26th, 2021. Any questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ms. Ireland, any correspondence?
Yes, sir, we received one email in opposition of PC 4-21. We received it after the agenda packets went out, so I did leave a copy for you at your seats. If you want to just take a look at that when you get a chance.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Allen, I received an email from Mr. Aldrich at my business address too, business email. Same, basically the same. Shorter.
And Mr. Chairman, I received a long voicemail from Mrs. Aldridge. She was in opposition of this item on the agenda tonight.
I also received the email.
Okay. Any other ex parte? All right, then, new business PC 04-21.
Okay, PC 4-21 is a conditional use application. Owner is Maki Cato Trust, 903 3rd Avenue North, Jacksonville Beach, Florida, 32250. Applicant is SMV Management LLC, 10150 Bell Rive Boulevard, Unit 106, Jacksonville, Florida, 32208. The agent for the application is Mr. Peter King, 404 West 70th Street, Jacksonville, Florida, 32208. The property location is 312 North 1st Avenue, and the request is for conditional use approval for a proposed 2-unit multiple family dwelling located in a commercial general C2 zoning district pursuant to section 34, 343D11 of the Jacksonville Beach Land Development Code. The subject property is located on the south side of 1st Avenue North, just west of A1A, and contains a vacant, non-conforming single-family dwelling constructed in 1931. The building sustained fire damage in the summer of 2020. In June of 2020, the electric meter was removed from the building, rendering the structure abandoned. Pursuant to section 34-622 of the Land Development Code, if a non-conforming use is discontinued or abandoned for a period of more than 6 consecutive months, then such use may not be reestablished or resumed, and any subsequent use shall conform to the provisions specified in the Land Development Code. Single-family uses are not a permitted use in commercial zoning districts and are considered non-conforming. The previous use was grandfathered in to exist as long as it remained active. The owner's representatives, through their agent, were advised that the existing non-conforming use could not be reestablished, and in order to have a residential use on the property, conditional use approval would be required, and the use would have to be multifamily. Based on the small lot size, a 2-unit multiple family project could be permitted. Adjacent uses include commercial to the east, commercial and multifamily residential to the north, a mix of residential and commercial uses to the west, and a bank to the south. Considering the mix of uses in the immediate vicinity and the fact that the non-conforming single-family use cannot be reestablished, the proposed use of a 2-unit multiple-family dwelling is not inconsistent with the surrounding uses and should not negatively impact adjacent uses.
All right, thank you, Ms. Ireland. Just very briefly for those in attendance, the manner in which the commission hears these applications is that staff will read the application into the record as Ms. Ireland has just done. We will have the applicant come forward, be sworn in, stating their name and address, offering any additional information that we have not heard from staff, fielding any questions from the planning commissioners. Following that, I have a few speaker cards here. I will ask those that have indicated they wish to approach and speak either in favor or in opposition to the application. Following that, public portion of the meeting will be closed and discussion will just be between the applicant, the planning commissioners, and staff. Keeping in mind any rendering in favor or in opposition to this application is based on, of course, the Jacks Beach Land Development Code, specifically conditional uses section 34, 231, and the 11 standards set forth therein that we have to base our renderings on. So with that, if the applicant's present, please step forward, raise your right hand.
Good evening. If you could please, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And if you could please state your name and address for the record.
Peter King, 404 West 70th Street, Jacksonville, Florida.
All right, Mr. King, is there additional information you'd like to offer?
Well, staff did an excellent report. There's no recommendation, so I just thought I'd say some things on my client's behalf.
Sure.
It is a substandard lot of record, 25-footer. I don't think the intent originally was to have this be a commercial piece of property. I mean, maybe it was in the CBD, but it's really just a residential lot, and my client would be okay with doing single family, but it's not permitted, so the next step up would be a duplex. So it's really the minimum that we can do and get out above that single family threshold, if you will. And multifamily is commonly used as a transitional use between single family and commercial, so we feel like it's appropriate there. And that's really it. I'm available, of course, for any questions that the board may have.
Questions for the applicant?
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. King, how many parking places are available on that lot as you see the project going forward?
So that's an excellent question. One of the reasons why we chose the duplex is because it would have the minimum parking spaces. 4 would be required, 2 per unit. We can only fit 2 in the front, and therefore we're going to have to follow up with a variance for the additional 2 spaces. We'll be having to ask for variance for some other setback-related issues as well.
Thank you. Are you aware that it's also been zoned as acceptable for short-term rentals?
Yes, that's correct. That is a permitted by right use.
So that could be
It could be.
more than 4. We don't know, but I would certainly anticipate if you had 2 units rented as short-term at the same time, you'd have more than 4 vehicles there.
Correct. Well, the city code, and staff can correct me if I'm wrong, but the city code has a formula that requires a certain number of parking spaces per room. And if you look in your packet, you'll see that we've got 3 rooms, 6 rooms.
6 rooms.
But following the formula would have about the same number of parking spaces required, and then we'd have to get a parking variance for the 2 spaces.
Same number being 4.
You would still need 4, correct?
Ms. Ireland, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
There you go. Thank you.
Any additional questions for the applicant? Thank you. We may have more afterwards. Mr. King, I had your card in favor of, obviously, representing the applicant, though I don't need to hear from you. I have two other speaker cards. I believe they're both in opposition to. One does not wish to address the board, so for the record, I'll read that into the record. From Gail Long, 316 First Avenue North in Jacksonville Beach. She is opposed to the application. And I have another one, Willard Michael. Mashad, if you'd approach. If you would please raise your right hand.
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
And if you could please state your name and address into the microphone for the record.
It's Willard J. Mashad III and 380 First Avenue North here in Jacksonville Beach. What they're trying to do here, I understand something needs to be done. The house is dilapidated and I would love to see something better put in there, but to put a multi-family unit on that 25-foot by 125-foot lot, I think is just too much for that lot. I think it's going to be a real parking problem in that area. My business is 2 lots down from it. There's apartments across the street. Sometimes their overflow comes over to my side of the street. The other issue that I have there is that they're talking about somehow using the alley to gain access to it, or maybe use some of that for parking. That's a very low area. It floods there, and I'm not talking just hurricane, just a good storm, standing water will be in those alleys there. Without doing a lot of work to those alleys, I don't see how that's going to work out there. But our biggest complaint is mainly going to be the number of cars that's going to be parked there. Like I said, my business is there. I know I don't own the whole corner, but it still will bleed over to where I'm sure where I'm at sometimes, and it's going to be a problem. And again, that whole area, not just that particular lot, but the lot next to me that I own, it's low there. I mean, we sometimes park our overflow cars there, and I have to be careful because if I know if a storm's coming in, it can actually get up to the doors on the car. And most of those houses over there, if you look and see, I mean, they're built off grade, so if it does get wet, it doesn't get wet in the houses. But I know they're talking about going 2 stories, and I feel like there's going to be times, especially when the hurricanes come, that it's probably going to get wet inside that lower unit that we're talking about building. And I know it's not zoned for single family, but I personally would have no problem with a single family unit going in there. Proportionally sized house, so they could put some parking spaces on the property too. But, you know, I just feel like it's going to be an issue for y'all in the future if this does go through, you know, between flooding, having to redo the alleys that are there, and again, the parking situation. There's a lot going on in that little street now. I'm not the only business owner there, but, and I don't, you know, I know you, again, can't control the whole corner there, but it's just going to create a lot more congestion, a lot more problems for people that are there. And that's basically all I have to say. I would like to say also, and if you look it up on Zillow, it shows a property, it lists the dimension size, and it says number of parking spaces too, which, you know, a 25 or 125 lot, that's about all you're going to be able to get on there, maybe 2 cars. But with a multi-family unit, there's going to be a lot more than 2 cars there, I feel like. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
I would say Mr. Willard's the beach's best mechanic.
Ms. Ireland, just out of curiosity, the property is zoned commercial.
Correct.
I don't know what the square footage would be of a commercial building if somebody wanted to put commercial on there. What's remind us what the difference is from a parking standpoint let's say for a comparable size commercial use?
Well, for even the smallest little office building, let's say 900 square feet for office, at minimum 2 parking spaces would have to be required and 1 ADA, so 3 spaces total, just for the lowest intensity commercial use. The difference is that parking for commercial can't back up into the street, whereas parking for residential can actually back up into the street right of way. So that's one of the differences between a commercial use and a residential use from a parking standpoint. The parking space sizes are the same with the exception of the 1 required ADA space.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
While we're talking about parking, when you look at the property now and you look at the parking on the south side of First Street, I drove by a few times and spent some time looking at it from Google Maps as well. And that utility right away is parkable. It's right in front of the property. It is not. So how much of that is not allowed to be used? Because they're going to overflow there for sure.
Well, they can't, while people are allowed to park in the right-of-way, unless there's signage that says they can't park in the right-of-way, they can't count it towards their parking. So
Okay.
while cars can park out there, and they often are, because in this little area of the beach, several businesses and other uses don't have parking. So
Right.
you do have that overflow in this area in general, just for the uses that are currently there. So while people can park out there, unless there's a sign that says they can't, like fire loading zone or something like that.
Like don't block the driveway,
Correct. That they wouldn't be able to count that towards.
because there's a sign there right now that says don't block the driveway.
Is there?
Yeah. Thank you, Ms. Allen.
Yes, sir.
Sort of seems just from a practicality standpoint, though, a commercial use there, while the usage was what Ms. Ireland read, from a practical standpoint, that could end up being quite a bit more intensive, depending on what the business is.
Could we not, I mean, this is a conditional use request, can we not provide a conditional use back to a single family?
No, that's not a listed conditional use in the C2 zoning district. Otherwise, I think that's what they would have been shooting for.
And that's what they're, saying they would prefer to have. My other question, through the chair, if you may, this would be a question for the applicant, real quick.
Yep, Mr. King?
Mr. King, I'm looking at the current survey, and the building is pushed all the way to the front of the street. There's a lot of room in the back. Is there the ability, since it is in a commercial lot, I know that it's standards, we still need to conform to the RM, I guess it'd be an RM2. Can we push that building back and provide more parking in the front?
I had the same question exactly, because there's no access from the back, right? There's trees and other property you can't get through.
That's correct.
Park in the back.
I don't know if the alley is legally or officially closed, but it's functionally closed. There's no way to get back there. So the problem is that when you start pushing back, now you have to stack the spaces. So if you stack the spaces, now you need a driveway, now you need a turnaround. You need a fire department access. It gets really messy, and you can't put a car, drive by the building, put a car in the back, because the lot's only 25-foot wide. You need a 9-foot, well, for someone safely, it depends on, how much they drank on Friday night, I guess, but, you need enough space to get past the house, and then get in the back, and then do a 4-point turn, and then get out along the side of the house, and come back out to the street again. So when you start moving spaces off the right of way, you start gobbling up land really, really fast in order to accommodate the vehicle on the site. there's a way to do it, we definitely would do it because it's leasability. It's much better for give a tenant, you have 2 spaces. Well, now it's going to be, sorry, you have 1, and then your other tenant's going to have to park on the street if he's transient or
You're the architect, not me, and I'm sure you've looked at all of the angles, but it occurs to me that if you had a couple of garage slots in the front, you could put the living space in the back. You wouldn't need the access to put the cars. Then you'd have 4 spots without a variance. You'd have 2 in front and 2 in the garage.
Well,
Yeah.
then we'd have to have a 3-story house, and now you got a sprinkler. So it gets, once you go into 3 stories, it gets really messy. So.
Couldn't you slide the living unit back from the garage? Again, you're the architect, but could you just put a garage out front with a deck or whatever, and then have the living units be just exactly as they're designed?
Like half of that first story would be like just a half story. And then you have
Placed
2 stories.
a couple of hangars for your cars, and then
And then, yeah.
porch.
Well, I mean, that's actually a really nice idea, and it would look nice from the road. The problem is the people in the garage have to park, get around the people in the back. I'll talk to my client, see if they want to do that, because you may be able to do it if you have, one behind the other, but you'd have to coordinate with the person behind you so you can get out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you could do them side by side, not tandem. You could do them side by side if you slid the living unit back. Push your garage, slide your living units back, put a porch in.
So you're saying put the garage, and then move it back far enough so there's room for more parking in front of the garage?
Yeah, have your parking out front be where it would be right now, but start your garage at the end of that parking and then slide your living units back
Slide the living units back. Yeah.
off the garage top, and then you don't have the access issue. Then you don't have the tandem parking, you got the side-by-side parking. You got a nice little deck out there, like you said, that would look nice. I don't know. I just hate to see those units get rented to 6 college kids and there'll be 12 cars there. That's just,
Yeah.
you see it all over the place.
Yeah. Well, that's really not the intent, because that's a use that requires a lot more management than
Yeah.
my client's going to do. And he would much rather have 2 families in there and then roll it to another investor that says, hey, I have constant income. It's much harder to value these buildings and have these temporary.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
I get that.
yeah.
So that'll be the short-term rental the second time around.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say, but I can tell you what my investor wants to do, which is he doesn't want to do the short-term situation. I mean, it is permitted by right.
It is.
So he could if he wanted to, but that's really not the intent. Basically what we're trying to do here is today is get the conditional use approval for a 2-family unit. Because that's really all we can do. We can't do a single family. We can't do a commercial use is fraught with all kinds of issues. Parking, if we had to do parking, like Heather's saying, I calculated if we did the same size footprint as this, we'd have 6 to 8 spaces. If we went up 2 stories, we'd be 12 to 16 spaces. And if we did the 4 right use hotel, not short-term rental, we'd call it a hotel or something. Now we've got the same kind of parking situation. So the idea is just to put something on this lot of record, legal lot of record, that can be allowed. And the only thing we can come up with is a duplex. Anything more than that would have more parking problems. we also feel like since it's so close to 3rd Street, and if you have people who are unfamiliar with the commercial site's location and are following their GPS, and they're making that turn, and they're trying to find the spot, find the business, and new people who are unfamiliar with the site coming on a daily basis, I think is going to have more impact on neighbors when they realize they have nowhere to park. If it was CBD, yeah, you got the parking, the group parking, but here, people are coming in, they're going to realize they don't have a place to park, that's if they find it. And then you have people going left and right, up and down 1st Street. So we feel like if we had some good long-term residential tenants who know where they're going, this would actually be the best use for this spot.
I got a quick question through the chair, if you don't mind, quick. So Ms. Ireland, if this was a 900 square foot office building, and we say hypothetically they have to have 3 parking spaces, we can regulate that because they're a business. They can have no more than 3 parked cars out front, correct?
The regulation of parking is the police department, and unless, again, there's signs that say no parking, or like Mr. Dahl said, no blocking the driveway, that's a parking enforcement issue. And we can't really tell them you can't have more than 5 customers at a time. So it would be whether or not they're allowed to park in the right of way or not. I think along that stretch of street they are allowed. There's no signage other than you mentioned the no blocking a certain driveway.
I haven't seen any signage.
Yeah.
Although there was nobody parked out there at the time, there's people parked out at Mr. Willard's, but just as customers, you can see where they end.
I mean, in general,
So
unless
if
otherwise
there's 3
noted.
designated spots for this, call it an office building, and they were starting to double park or park more cars in that one, they would be coming as the parking
Nuisance.
nuisance, yeah.
It could.
If they've met their minimum, they've met their minimum, their
Right.
requirement, they've met their requirement.
Okay. I guess my
That's
question
kind of where I
is,
was going earlier.
I mean, if it was an office building and they were designated 3 spots, we could have regulated 3 spots versus having 12, 6, whatever the, short-term rental, it ends up becoming, has 5 cars parked out front, which we know that's the case that we're running into right now. 6 cars potentially, and they're going to be parked up and down 3rd Street. I'm just wondering if we could regulate the commercial space more so than the residential, so.
I don't think you could regulate either any differently unless somebody, again, is parking in front of someone else's property, blocking their access to their property. In general, parking on street rights of way are allowed in Jack's Beach unless there's signs that say you can't. That's why you see cars parked up and down on the avenues on busy weekends. They find wherever they can go.
Thank you.
How many other non-residential rental places are on that block?
We haven't surveyed that street. I honestly couldn't answer that question. I think there are some. I know
On
there's
that particular block?
some on that particular block.
At least 2 that I saw.
Okay, thank you.
Can I add one thing to the parking? I just did the math in my head and I realized if we had an ADA, which is 13 foot wide, and then 2 9-footers, which is 3 spaces, that would be 31 feet. The lot's only not 25 foot wide. So we could do an office even if we wanted to. We're kind of like, between 2 hard spaces here. Either the lot's going to get demoed and be undevelopable forever and become a park, or he can do something with it.
If I could, Mr. Chair, add to agree with Mr. King here that it would not be possible to provide 3 parking spaces for a commercial use, which is the minimum, on that site and meet the parking standards. It literally isn't possible, just from a dimension standpoint.
Is this on the agenda for the Board of Adjustment?
Yes, it is. I don't have the exact date in front of me, but it is on the agenda for variance.
So if the planning commission's desire was to approve this application, it would, if that is not granted, then it's going to fail.
Correct. Yeah, you mean if the variance is not granted?
Correct.
Yes, the use could be approved and the variance could not be approved. And again, the Board of Adjustment will take up the issue of the number of parking spaces being proposed on the property and what they need relief for, in addition to the setbacks.
Okay.
I have a question for Ms. Ireland. Are we somehow tracking, I think there might be some bit of consensus that a single-family home, replacing a single-family home might be the most reasonable approach, but our land development regs don't allow it. So are we kind of keeping a list of the shortcomings or the issues that are, because I'm sort of hearing that that's the most reasonable use of the property. And it used to be the use of the property, but we don't allow it.
You're right, yeah, it would be the most reasonable use based on the lot size. But since we don't get a lot of requests for people to do single family, and particularly in C2, because it is our more intense commercial zoning district. So you have things like auto repair shops and restaurants and things like that that generally aren't compatible with single-family uses. Multifamily, as Mr. King mentioned, and I agree, is a more transitional use between the commercial that's already there. But no, we haven't given any thought to adding single-family as a conditional use in either C1 or C2 districts, at least not at this point in time. There isn't a lot of requests for that.
Well, and I guess my point has to do with this sort of special nature of an oddly shaped site, or being able to look at the uniqueness seems to be something we're not able to do after 6 months. So it's just something to think about.
Yeah, I agree.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Just out of curiosity, what is the setback variance you guys are going to be asking for?
So we're going to ask for the parking, because we prefer to, and we're going to have to ask for the side setback, even though the commercial is 0, because it's residential. Staff feels like we need to be asking for a variance for the setback, for the side setbacks.
What are you going to ask for?
That's what I'm
Oh,
asking. Yeah.
so I'm sorry. So we're going to 0 on one side, which is what's already permitted in that zoning district. And I'm sorry, I don't have the application in front of me, but I believe there's also provision in the code that requires parking to be in the back. And so this is and I wasn't clear about that, so this is a precaution. We're asking for the parking to be in the front. Let's see, what else? And there's a provision in the code that the parking spaces need to be 5 foot away from the side and from the right of way. So we're pushing the 2 spaces together and putting them on one side. That way we don't have to ask for variance from one side, not from both.
So both of the parking spaces for both units will be right next to each other?
Correct. They would be next to each other, because if we put them apart, then we have to ask for variance on this side and that.
Yeah, like 5 to 5.
Right.
Through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Total parking spaces if you get your variance.
We're required for asking for to reduce to 2, so the total will be 2 on site.
Okay, I misunderstood, thank you.
Yeah, because it's 2 per. One.
So they really only have 15 feet of parking area, because there's 5 and 5, right? Just making sure. Okay.
That's right. There's all kinds of, and if we try to do the commercial again, we'd have to have 5 and 5.
Yep.
And with residential, it has to be 5.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion, or any questions for the applicant? Thanks. Discussion?
Mr. Chair, I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
I think Mr. King did a great job presenting his client's case here today, and I can see their issue, but I would like to discuss the potential to roll this forward, postpone it until we hear the Board of Adjustment's decision. Over.
Ms. Aaron, do you know exactly when that is?
No, I'm sorry, I don't have that date in front of me. It's in a couple of weeks, I know that.
What would be the benefit of that?
Oh, we might have a moot issue here, number one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we went to decide.
Depending on which meeting, the BOA is May 18th and June 1st are the upcoming two. Now, I don't know which
Thank you.
meeting it would be at, but those are the dates.
Can I say something? Can I say something? Please? Can I say
Sorry.
something,
Yes, sir.
please? I'm sorry. I'm not an attorney, I only play one on TV, but I don't think the variance board can grant variance on use that's not even permitted. I think that's an issue. I think it's a problem. I think if we do that, they can kick it back to you again.
I mean, honestly, we prefer to get the use approved before the variance, because if the variance goes, we bring it back to you guys, and then you end up disapproving it anyway, the variance doesn't stand for a use that's not approved. So generally, we push them in the direction of the use gets approved first, then they go before the Board of Adjustment and do the variance. So we don't recommend the other way around.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
I'd just like to point out that the 34231 postcard we have on our desk in front of us, item 8 says there's adequate ingress and egress, and it's designed so as to minimize traffic congestion on the city's roads. And I think that kind of sticks out as an issue in my mind, and I think it would make it hard for me to be fully on board, even though I think Mr. King did a great job. I think everybody knows there's congestion everywhere, and you know there's going to be, with 6 bedrooms there, maybe not with your clients, but in the future there's going to be problems. So I just point that out. 34231, adequate ingress.
Ms. Harlan, what could be the option to get this a single family? I mean, is there any special request that could go through the city council?
We would have to change the code to either allow single family as a conditional use or permitted use in this zoning district, or we'd have to do like the smallest PUD in the city. Those would be the only 2 options. Yeah, the code would have to change. That's at minimum about a 16-week process. And private property owners can no longer apply to change the code, so it would have to be at the direction of city council for us to move forward with that.
And can you, I mean, if we granted a PUD on this, what would the issues we would be faced with if we did that?
I mean, that's unusual to do such a small lot for a PUD. I can't even think of any examples off the top of my head for something that, for one single family. It's a very long process to go through to allow one single family.
Just for the record, I agree with Mr. Dole. I think I have a concern with the adequate ingress and egress for this property, especially that is a congested road. We've got St. Paul's on that street, a lot of through traffic. I know that the cool cars, the Catopia, all of that stuff is right there in that area, and just envisioning cars, 4 cars parked there on the road is something that's just giving me some heartburn, so I just want to put that on the record as well.
Mr. Chair, may I offer some thoughts on the parking issue that you guys are concerned about?
Yes, ma'am.
If you choose to move this forward as approved, you could make a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, perhaps, that we could take to them, that parking be provided, because, and I don't know that this exact site plan is what the Board of Adjustment, it may have changed some, as Mr. King said, the parking spaces have moved both to one side of the property, but there's 35 feet. There is room to put 2 parking spaces. They're 17 feet deep is the requirement, and you can tandem them for residential property like this. So, even with making the building a little bit smaller, perhaps, they could fit 4 spaces and meet the requirement. They've chosen not to for whatever reason. I don't have that information, but that could be just an option for you guys. If that was something you were concerned about, we could move that forward to the Board of Adjustment and let them know how your approval was granted if you choose to go that direction.
Those 2 of those spaces, if you had all 4 spaces occupied, you'd be locking 2 cars in, correct?
Right.
Okay. Okay. That's, so if we were to do a conditional use approval, the conditional use could be that 4 spaces were included on the property, 4 parking spaces. And that would put it on the Board of Adjustment to have to figure that out.
Right, because they've requested just the 2 spaces, and that is their, purview to grant those or not. But again, there's room on the property to do it based on this site plan, again, that I'm looking at. I don't have the VOA case in front of me. I don't have that. I did bring it, but I do think that there is room for them to add those 4 parking spaces, which would make it meet the requirement. Whether there's 6 cars or 12 cars out there, the requirement is 2 per dwelling unit.
Sure. I was asking more from if somebody wanted to put that into if they were considering approval, to put that into the motion.
I would consider putting it into a motion to deny.
I don't think she stated it as a motion, though.
We close the discussion.
If there's no more, any more discussion, or do I have a motion?
Actually, can I just say something while we're still talking about this?
Ms. Moore?
One of the things Ms. Ireland just said is that you couldn't do it, or it would be difficult to do it as a planned unit development, and it would be the tiniest PUD in the city. I'm not sure that I'm concerned about it being the tiniest PUD in the city. I mean, planned unit developments are supposed to be because the site is special in some way, or can take into account the specialness or the oddness, uniqueness. So is a PUD process onerous in the city of Jacks Beach? Is that what we're saying?
I mean, it is, just like any other rezoning, it comes before you guys, and then it goes to city council for 2 readings. It's something that the applicant would have to want to go forward with, changing the zoning of the property. It's $1,000 application fee, so it is a much longer process to get there than to request a conditional use approval, which is kind of usually a one-stop shop through you guys, not the multi-step process that goes to city council like a PUD rezoning is.
Okay, but it is an option.
It would be, potentially, yes.
That would still be an option with denial of this application.
Yeah, it wouldn't impact this application if they wanted to go that
Sure.
route.
Yeah.
We typically don't necessarily recommend rezonings of that small of a property, but
I understand.
all of our lots are very tiny, so we're kind of in a unique situation.
Any further discussion, or do I have a motion?
A motion to deny.
Motion to deny, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, motion is to deny the application PC 04-21. Roll call vote, please. A yes vote is in favor of the denial. Sorry.
Margot Moring,
No.
Britton Sanders,
Yes.
Colleen Murphy White,
Yes.
David Dahl,
Yes, based on 34-231, number 8.
Greg Sutton,
No. All right, your application has been denied. Planning Department report, Ms. Ireland?
So a couple items here. First and most importantly, I want to introduce you all to Christian Popoli, who is the new senior planner in our department, and I'm like super excited. Y'all have no idea how excited. We stole him from the city of Jacksonville. Also, that makes me feel better. So he's gonna be doing all the stuff that I've been doing for the last 6 years. So you guys will see him at the meetings now most of the time instead of me. Let's see. We've
Welcome,
got-
Kristen.
Yes. If you need him, let me know. We'll get you his contact information so you can get in touch with him. Our next meeting is tentatively on June 14th. I think we might have one case for that, not a second May meeting though. So enjoy some time. And then we have a council workshop scheduled for May 24th. It's going to be at 6 p.m. To discuss a potential proposed project at Beach Marine. And I will send you all an invitation to that. It is optional if you want to attend and listen in. It will be an in-person meeting here in council chambers May 24th at 6. So I will get that invitation out to you guys if you're interested in attending. If you have any questions on that, let me know. And as always, thank you.
Can you give us a little brief of what that may be about?
It's just a proposed project. They want to do a beach marine. So the developers and the landowner are going to come in and talk about, what they want to do. And from staff side, we'll just talk a little bit more about the process and, the things that they have to go through to actually do what they are proposing to do. So it'll be fun. And that's it.
Thank you.
Sue. Thanks, guys. We could change the taxes.